we need a radical shift, radical. And this is why so many people, and I'm very sorry about that, feel it and vote extreme right or extreme left. They feel that something needs to change radically because the muddling through that we had so far is not working anymore. And the hydrogen world is a perfect example for that. But there is hope.
Let's Talk Hydrogen, the podcast from H2UB. We bring the most exciting minds from the world of hydrogen and molecules to the microphone and talk about innovations, trends, and opportunities.
Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Hydrogen, the podcast of H2UB. My name is Uwe Kerkmann, CEO of H2UB. Over the past 5 years, we at H2UB have built Europe's leading innovation ecosystem for hydrogen and energy, together with partners and pioneers who believed in our vision from day one. In this special edition of Let's Talk Hydrogen, we are speaking with those who have helped shape H2UB. Together, we look back at the past 5 years and try to explore what comes next. Today's guest is very special to me, and he is joining us for the second time on Let's Talk Hydrogen, Jorgo Chatzimarkakis, CEO of Hydrogen Europe. When Jorgo joined us last, we discussed ideology versus pragmatism in the hydrogen economy. And since then, the industry has faced new realities. Slower project implementation, increasing international competition, changing political priorities, and growing pressure to turn ambitious strategies into real business cases. As one of Europe's strongest voices for the hydrogen economy, Jorgo is at the center of these discussions. And his organization, Hydrogen Europe, plays an important role in shaping the industry's response and adapting its strategy to the new realities of politics and business. Jorgo, it's really great to welcome you again, or welcome you back to Let's Talk Hydrogen, and thank you for joining us.
It's always a pleasure and an honor to talk to you, Uwe.
Likewise, Jorgo, likewise. So, since your first appearance at our Hydroverse convention and on the podcast, the industry has experienced both excitement and frustration. Expectations were enormous a couple of years ago, but implementation has been slower than hoped. How would you describe the current state of the European hydrogen market and industry?
Well, we have to distinguish between hydrogen developments globally and in Europe. Globally, it goes quite well. So if we trust the IEA, the International Energy Agency in Paris, that comes up every year with an outlook of the hydrogen development, the pace of the development globally is absolutely in line or even better than photovoltaic PV some 20 years ago. So as it's a nascent and new technology, it needs, of course, to scale up, but the scaling happens mostly in China, but also we had last week big developments between Japan and India. So many of this happens in the Asian world, or when it comes also to the so-called blue hydrogen in the US. Europe has chosen to basically hype hydrogen politically and in words, but then to block it and to stop it by regulation. And that's not the first time that this happens to a technology.
So, seeing, as you said, the hydrogen economy developing in other places of the world faster than in Europe, I would like to mention that Europe has been building one of the most ambitious regulatory frameworks for hydrogen. Competitiveness is just as important as sustainability, I would say. So, has the balance shifted in the right direction? Or let me frame it the other way. Is the regulatory framework in Europe, is it supporting or hindering the development?
It was intended to support, but it does exactly the opposite. This was told to the European policymakers quite early by other geographies. I personally remember very well some 4 years ago when my commissioner, back then energy commissioner, was visiting India, and I had the honor to sit on a panel, and the Indian minister knew the regulation, the delegated act, especially on defining hydrogen, much better than my commissioner, and told her this is not working. This is one of the specificities of us Europeans. We aim for the perfect in order to achieve, in the end, nothing. And this is a real cultural, mental problem. So Americans would try to go for 80% perfectness and perfection, and then just try it out. In other cultures, it's even less. So we need to change this dramatically now. But I can tell you that unfortunately, when it comes to this special delegated act, the Commission just started yet another public consultation to delay again the whole process, although they have been told by all sides, but the Commission has become a governance problem. So it's not just the member states and the complexity with different, it's the Commission as an authority as such that is divided in silos, that has experts in inverted commas, because these people don't know reality. So we have a governance problem in Europe, and it becomes dramatic.
Has this to do, Jorgo, with the difficulties in the machine room? I remember when we talked the last time, you made a distinction between politics and policies, mentioning that although like the politics mentioned that we need to be more flexible, and you were always the one advocating more pragmatic approaches to develop the hydrogen economy. So is this a problem of policies, as you said, of the machine room, or is it more a fundamental thing of we do not believe in hydrogen any longer?
Well, it's a mix. You have people who don't understand, as they don't know markets, they don't know industrial processes, and also how bankability, investability works. But there are others who have ideological background or a clear interest governing them. So I can tell you examples of people who worked for so-called NGOs or the so-called civil society, and now get back to their job into the European Commission because there were civil servants that went to this so-called NGO and now come back. So it's clear interests. And if you have a look at where the NGOs get their money from, most of it comes from the US. You will understand that there are special interests behind it. In the past, we tend to think, well, Americans are our friends. Yes, we did think like that. I think we need to reconsider. And this, especially after, I remember very well, J.D. Vance's speech at the Munich Security Conference. I was there, I listened to it, and many people heard the political issues. He said on industrial policy, we want to become great again as America. We want your industry. We want industry from Europe to be allocated and located in the US. And I cannot close my eyes to what I see in this machinery room. And I have my doubts, and I'm very explicit on that, whether this is all in European interest or serving other interests. I'm very sorry for that because I'm a European. Well, I wrote a book, The European Patriotism, and I believe in that European Union, but it seems to be abolished from inside. And this is very bad. I know what I'm saying, but I have to say it because we see with our eyes that industrialization is going down, and innovation that happens in Europe is not put into the right place. So these mechanisms don't work with each other, and we need to stop it.
So these are very, like it's a very drastic view on things, but I believe you're somehow right. But like stepping aside a little bit from the procedures and from the policies, what would you say? Where does Europe need to become more pragmatic? Like, what should we really do to overcome these difficulties?
I give you an example. For the hydrogen world, we have an international standard, an ISO standard that especially Europeans developed. It's super transparent. It explains how exactly you measure the CO2 emissions connected to a molecule of hydrogen. Unless, without any view on how it's produced, green way or CCS way, etc. This international standard is like a currency. It works everywhere. Why on earth do we Europeans who developed that standard need extra regulation that harms any business of Europeans with other parts of the world? Why on earth? We don't need it. And this is pragmatism. Just see which rules are there. They are super transparent, even more transparent than in the electricity world, to be honest. But I have clear evidence that people paid a lot of money from that circles that I just described to keep up this so-called delegated act, this dense regulation to keep down hydrogen. Clear evidence. I'm also happy to share this. Um, Not here, but we can. I have all the sources. So my point is, pragmatism is to understand that the world out there has special rules. We don't need extra rules that we expect the others to follow. They are not that naive anymore. They were maybe some years ago. They don't do that anymore, and that's why we are losing a lot of innovative ideas to other parts of the world because they cannot fly here due to that regulatory density.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I really agree. So, speaking about the world that is developing and the world that is changing, I would like to ask you about the new narratives we are facing when it comes to hydrogen. So, the geopolitical environment has changed significantly over the last years, and climate debate is kind of replaced by a resilience debate. Does this help the hydrogen economy? What's your take on that?
Well, the climate debate is not over. I mean, we have now seen quite hot days, unusually hot days already in June and especially in July. And people are aware that something changed with our weather and most probably with our climate. So the urgency is not gone, but the perception that we need to spend a lot of money on that is different from 10 years ago, from 5 years ago. That has to do also with strong voices like Bill Gates, the guy who was paying a lot to keep hydrogen somehow down. Bill Gates, who says, you know what? Why don't we pay money into mitigation of climate change rather than fighting the sources of climate change? And he started to say that a year ago, and more people think into that direction, which means that we also have to look into other urgencies that we in Europe face. And one of the clearest urgency is, of course, our dependency in whatsoever in the meanwhile. So we have the dependency on energy and also on defense protection by NATO and especially by the US. And we need to basically reduce the dependency. That costs money. And reducing dependency by, call it resilience, which is nothing else than the reliability of supply of energy that you possibly produce yourself. So renewables are super, and all the climate debate helped to have much more renewables. And so it was not useless or worthless. It was the best preparation we could have. But reliability also means that you need reliability in molecules. Also, then we can produce with renewables with the help of hydrogen here in Europe, but we also need trusted partners and a diversification of partners. And this can only happen by, again, pragmatism. So, why should all the countries that we now want to have as partners for strategic molecules like hydrogen or its derivatives, ammonia, e fuels, etc., why should they all stick to the European rules if they say no? we have this transparent ISO standard. We can stick to this rule, which is much more evident and practicable and workable than your European rule. If you want it like this, take it. If not, Japan offers a $20 billion CFD scheme. The only condition is no Chinese. We go there. That's what our Indian friends, my member company ACME, did last week. They signed this big contract with India. And they were on their visiting roadshow in Europe, and I was accompanying them, and they said, please, give us off takers. We are producing the strategic molecule. And all the off-takers said, yeah, but we have to stick to these rules. That's why I started to talk to ministers and also to governors in Germany, especially, saying, why can't you consider not to apply the rule? I know. That's very bad what I say. But if a rule harms your society, your economy, or if the rule is not at all understandable, and we are facing a lot of regulation that we don't understand, the policymakers don't understand, and this organized unresponsibility, no, you cannot accept this anymore. And that's the point where I say a rule of law can only work if law is understandable. If it's not understandable, goodbye. And this is a discussion that we need to start right now. Otherwise, we get deeper and deeper into this dependency. And that's what we need to unlock, the potential of becoming more independent. We call it resilience value. So whatever makes you more independent or gives you more reliable partners or homegrown energy and molecules deserves to be paid with this resilience value. And we are working on that. And I think the ears of politicians are open, and we need to reach their brain faster than with other political issues.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I really understand what you mean, and in addition to that, I would argue that if all the others play by a different set of rules or definitions, we are kind of challenged by being outmaneuvered again, probably by Chinese or other companies, like we have faced in the solar industry. When we wanted 120% solution in Europe, we gave subsidies first, then canceled the subsidies, and others were producing solar modules and are now ruling the world markets. Do you see a similar development happening in hydrogen?
It's the same. It's not only similar, it's the same development. Invented here, implemented at other parts of the world. And I think during our last podcast, I already alluded to this ability of turning knowledge that we have into money. That's innovation. Turning money into knowledge, we are great. Huh? We have researchers, we have all this. But if you're not able to turn this knowledge into concrete marketable money or marketable products that bring money, then you have an issue. And this is something I was myself politician, so policymaker some years ago, and we suffered from the same issue back then. I don't see any changement. So we need a radical shift, radical. And this is why so many people, and I'm very sorry about that, feel it and vote extreme right or extreme left. They feel that something needs to change radically because the muddling through that we had so far is not working anymore. And the hydrogen world is a perfect example for that. But there is hope because we still have quite a good position because we have the technology, we have possible off-takers that say we need it. So we saw it in especially in Germany when the core grid asked for buyers, and we have an oversubscription already. So the demand is there, everything is there. What is in our way are these crucial regulations that really, really we need to get rid of, and that's why I insist on that. And my words are hard, and I know, but sometimes a wake-up call is hard. It's not always nice.
Absolutely. I wanted to come back to the topic of innovation. You mentioned that we are very good in Europe in making science from money, but not in making money from science. That is, we are not very good in transferring innovation from a scientific context into business. So we at H2Hub started 5 years ago as a dedicated hub for startups in hydrogen, to bring them closer to the market, to support them very individually. We have become Europe's leading startup hub for hydrogen, recognized even by the Financial Times, which I'm very proud of. So when you see what we are doing or what others are doing with startups, how would you comment on that? What are organizations like H2Hub doing? Are they important from your perspective? And what has to be done next in order to bring more innovative ideas from Europe into the ramp up phase of the hydrogen market?
So, first of all, thanks very much for inviting me to Hydroverse, to all the possibilities to get your network known much, much better. Also, thanks very much for coming with your network to our European Hydrogen Week in Brussels, where you have definitely the loudest and most active booth, which shows me the enthusiasm of people there. So I really understood what you're doing in principle. I finally understood it, dear Uwe, when you were yourself guest in a podcast quite recently on startups. That was led by Melina Chatzimarkakis, so my daughter. But I listened to you carefully, and I really, really understood even better what you do. Wow. So, the help you give to these young people motivated with a certain idea, but failing in having contacts, failing in having access to finances, failing in understanding how big companies would purchase their product and bringing them closer to them. This is great. I know that there are much, much, much less startups in the hydrogen world than in other, like in digital economies, but they need even more so this support, and that's what you are doing, because there are many things you are not taught in university, but by networking and by bringing fundamental rules close to these startup driven people is crucial, and you do that. This is a job that needs to be even extended, because we are losing ideas, we are losing the enthusiasm of people, because they start with a good idea, they are born as Europeans, they grow up here, or they are born as Indians, come to Europe, and then they see, oh, there's a ceiling. I cannot develop myself as I would in Bangalore or in California, or in Wuxi in China, and they are disappointed. And this is absolutely problematic for us Europeans. We need to caress them. We need to keep them here. We need to do whatever we can to make it attractive to stay. And you, with your network, are one good example how this could work. And we need to enhance your possibilities. This is why I would wish that this initiative that started basically in North Rhine-Westphalia in Germany has become German and then European, because there are less startups. So this needs to become a European project, very much so. And whatever I could do in my capacity, I would, in order to support this, because it's a do or die question, and you do, otherwise they die. Yeah.
Wow, a great statement. Thank you so much for seeing what we are doing and for acknowledging what we are doing. So I really believe you are absolutely right. We started as an initiative from North Rhine-Westphalia in Germany, but from the very beginning, it has been a very European idea. And from the very beginning, we had European startups in our programs, and I was really proud of that, not only because it shows that we are able to do a European project, but of course it shows that startups in all parts of Europe have similar problems or challenges. And the problems are, of course, not only to get money and investment and funding for what they are doing, but also getting contact and in touch with corporations that are working with innovative solutions or that are demanding new innovative solutions for their business models. So the point of bringing startups very close to the corporate world, very close to those who are really working and dealing with hydrogen, that has been very, very important for us. And therefore, it's really important for us to work together with Hydrogen Europe, to be present at the Hydrogen Week, because all the decision makers from many, many corporates around, not only around Europe, but it's a very international event meanwhile. So this is very important for the startups, because we really believe that only together, newcomers, startups, young companies, together with established industries and corporations, they can make a difference in hydrogen, because it's really an expensive thing to do. You need a lot of investment for hardware innovation. So we believe in this kind of networking in the best sense, that is bringing those people together who have shared interests. So we are definitely willing to continue this work, and very grateful for your help anyway. So, Jorgo, you mentioned that we have seen a lot of changes in recent years, and we have discussed the narrative has been changing a little bit, although I absolutely agree there is still the necessity to address climate change, but somehow it's easier at the moment to argue with resilience and the role hydrogen can play in Europe. So when we meet again in another 5 years, what would you hope the European hydrogen industry has achieved by then? Then, of course, looking out of a window in Saarbrücken, but we can discuss that later. But what would you expect? How will the hydrogen economy in Europe look like?
I hope you refer to my Saarbrücken home office that I enjoy some.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm very productive in my home office, sometimes even more so than in Brussels. Why? Because you can concentrate on topics, also on content, much more than. However, in 5 years, the so-called resilience debate will have reached its top. We will see that some projects kicked off to produce out of curtailed energy that we have en masse in Europe. We will in 5 years have expenditures of around 25, 26 billion euro to curtail and redispatch the renewable energy. And this is why we will at least reduce by 5 billion this amount, because we will we will harvest this renewable energy to produce molecules. We will not achieve it for the whole 25 billion, just for 5 billion, because to get away with these regulations, it also needs some time. Take the regulation that electrolyzers are not systemic part of this grids. I mean, this is so amazing. But so 5 billion we will reduce, and at the same time we will build up, starting from ESAF, so from sustainable aviation fuel made with renewable hydrogen, used for the defense sector first, but being dual use possible, used as, of course, as there will be hopefully no war for civilian airlines. So we will see these first projects all over Europe, uh, some density in Germany, because that's where it starts, that create exactly what we are talking about, a sovereignty in producing and managing your own energy and your own molecules without fossil energy. And this is great. We can do it. We will see that also in 5 years, that some trucks will use big 10T, we call them 10T axis. So it's motorways that go from Spain to Sweden, and that this is exactly the one that we are concentrating on. We'll see trucks going from Sweden to Spain based on liquid hydrogen and going 1,040 kilometers, so 1,000 kilometers without refueling. And we will equip this big motorway with the according infrastructure. So these are elements that you will see. Plus, of course, the hydrogen debate will not be about problems anymore, but about how to make sure that data centers that become also a big innovation, but also energy consuming entity, will make sure that they have base load oriented, stable power supply. And also there, hydrogen will be one of the storage capacities that will deliver energy for these data centers. So these are developments that I see. And we then will, of course, also start in 5 years to discuss how profitable this will be in the future from then on. Until then, the resilience value will need to help us closing the gap. As of then, profits will start, and Europeans are in 5 years smart enough to understand that they are not aliens in this world, but that they are basically also part of the normal world.
I'm really enthusiastic, Jorg, about your very positive view of the future. And what I like most is that it's not a description of a somewhat positive future that might evolve somehow, but you seem to be implementing what you've decided just recently for the work of Hydrogen Europe to just form missions, to identify real projects and bring them on the road and set a date and set a goal. And I like this very much because you mentioned very concrete examples of how hydrogen will play an important role and has to play an important role. And I really wish us all the best luck to pursue this way, to work on these missions, to make that really happen. But I have a last question for you, because I sense a lot of energy when you're talking about your work, you're talking about hydrogen. You have experienced many ups and downs in the industry since you work with hydrogen. You have been advocating for hydrogen across Europe, around the world. What motivates you personally? And where do you see very personally the light at the end of the rainbow, referencing to the speech you gave at Hydroverse Convention 2 years ago? So what's your personal motivation?
Yes, indeed. We discussed back then the rainbow, the end of the rainbow, as stopping to discussing colors of hydrogen. You remember that. But indeed, there is something that motivates me, and that's my 4 daughters. So I have 4 daughters in the age of 10 up to 27. And these 4 daughters motivate because I want them to have the free choice of staying in Europe, because they are Europeans. We grew up in a very European sense. I'm absolutely a lover of all geographies in the world, but I want to keep my own Europe that I started with and started in and was born into, to keep it livable. And that means that you need to keep also some jobs here. And it's one of the most livable continents, as you know. But how to make sure it stays like this? That keeps me up, and that makes me want to change things. That motivates me.
That's a very positive motivation. And I talked to one of your daughters lately, and I really feel that's not only your spirit, but also the family spirit. So, yeah, I understand that perfectly. Jorgo, we are at the end of this episode, and I have to thank you very much for joining us for the second time on Let's Talk Hydrogen. Thank you very much. It was great to reflect on 5 years of H2Hub and to reflect the situation of the hydrogen economy with someone who has helped shape this same European hydrogen debate throughout their journey. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks to you, with pleasure.
You're welcome, Jorgo. And I'm looking ahead to another couple of years working with hydrogen and working with H2Hub. So I'm quite sure we'll see each other again. And to all the listeners, this was another episode of the 5-year special edition of H2Hub's Let's Talk Hydrogen. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to the podcast and share it with your network. And thanks for listening, and see and hear you next time. Thank you very much.